Welcome to the Noble Company podcast. I am your host, Joseann Smith. This podcast is dedicated to contemporary topics in business and will feature experts, academics, and entrepreneurs from across the world. Today, we are discussing indigenous brands, and we will be talking to academics and practitioners in South Africa and Barbados. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guests. So today we have Dianne N Squires.
Morning.
We have Dr. Nakosi Madinga. And we also have Dr. Joseann Knight.
Hello.
And I will just give a brief background on them. Now, I'll go with ladies first. So let's start with Dianne. Dianne is the owner of Dianne N Squires, Consulting. Her consulting practice focuses on helping organizations and individuals better define their brands and build trust with the people they aim to serve over the long term. She's worn many hats as a former dancer, choreographer, and head of marketing. She also holds a marketing degree in arts administration and cultural policy from Goldsmiths University of London and several professional qualifications in marketing. Welcome, Dianne.
Thank you, Rowan. It's so good to be here.
It's great to have you. Now, Joseann. Dr. Joseann Knight is a lecturer in marketing at UWI Cave Hill. She joined the UWI Cave Hill campus in 1999 after working in the field of management consulting. Her areas of expertise are consumer behavior and marketing research. Dr. Knight is a follower of Jesus Christ and a longstanding member of the Black Rock Church of the Nazarene. In her spare time, she likes to go to the beach and searching the internet for new recipes to try. Welcome, Joseann.
My pleasure to be here.
My pleasure to have you. Now, Dr. Nakosi Madinga is the head of marketing in the School of Management Studies at University of Cape Town, South Africa. He's been involved in developing marketing communication campaigns for various national brands in South Africa. His research is at the intersection of consumer psychology, decision-making, and marketing communication. Nakosi is an author of over 20 articles in top-tier international and local referee journals and has presented his work in various international conferences held across Europe, USA, the Middle East, and Australasia. Welcome, Nakosi.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. Now, let's start with how this entire topic came up. Now, a couple of months ago, I was having a conversation with Nkosi. Actually, it was just in December. And one of the things that he mentioned to me is that in South Africa, there was this trend in the past few years where South Africans were preferring their national brands over international brands such as Nike and Louis Vuitton. And I thought that it was a very interesting trend, and I thought it would be something good for us to discuss. And so, Nkosi, would you like to tell me a little bit more about that? Tell us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. So when we had a discussion, I told her that there's this fascinating trend in South Africa where people are now more receptive to local brands compared to international brands. And that is very interesting, taking into consideration that for so many years, local brands have been considered to be inferior, and whatever comes outside from our country was considered to be superior, offering better quality and so forth. But there's this new trend now that if any South African comes up with a brand, we are quick to support. And I think it has been influenced by accepting ourselves first, understanding who we are, and understanding that whatever we do has value. It contributes to the economy. And I also think traveling has an influence on how we perceive our own brands. Because when we used to perceive that international brands are better than us, we've never been outside South Africa. So going outside South Africa, seeing other countries, you get to realize that we are not as bad as we thought. We are not. We are not an ugly country. You go out there, and some of the countries that we believe were superior, they were all this. When you get to those countries, you realize that it was just good marketing. But my my point is accepting our brands started with accepting us and believing in us, believing in our capability, and also understanding the power of having money circulating in South Africa, job creation. That had a huge impact on how we perceived ourselves and how we perceived our own brands. Secondly, social media played a huge role in us getting to know about our brands. Because most people who started these local brands, they never thought they will be as big as they are today. Because they didn't have sufficient resources. But with social media, they were able to tell a story behind the brand. And I think that's what we fell in love with. In all the successful South African brands that were introduced, let's say from 2015 up to now. One is called Batu, and it's a shoe. It competes with Nike. It's a sneaker. It competes with Nike, Adidas, Reebok, and across the country they now have probably over 20 stores across the country. They are own stores, not being featured in one store. They've created so many job opportunities for South Africans. So what made us to accept that brand? It was the story that was told behind the brand, and that really resonates with most South Africans. Like we don't know much about Nike and the story behind Nike, and even if we are told, we don't resonate with that story. But with two, with grip, with purple jeans, with Zianda appliances, I can name so many other brands that we relate to. They have had a huge following in the past 5 years. And the third thing that had an influence in terms of us accepting it, it's a deliberate move from our government to have Proudly South Africa. Proudly South Africa is an organization that has been formed by our government to sort of promote South African brands. I'm not sure what happened. To sort of promote South African brands. So with all this marketing coming from Brand South Africa and having our celebrities wearing our brands, using our appliances, taking pictures, posting on social media, that has had a huge influence in how we have adopted our own brands.
All right. Thank you so much, Kosi, for sharing. And next, I'll go to you, Dianne. You're a local brand strategist. And when I say local, I mean that you're based here in Barbados, but
Yes.
I know that your reach is much wider. So you've worked with several brands. You have interviewed local brands for your podcast, and so I wanted to know: is there that trend that you see in Barbados toward adopting local brands?
Well, I guess I'll give from two perspectives. I suppose one is from the actual brands themselves, and then the other one is from the consumers. So I think probably around 2016 or so, especially with street food brands, to me, you saw a huge adoption of things that were local. I'll give one example, and I think this is probably one of the outstanding examples. One of those is yellow meat.
Mm-hmm.
And yellow meat And Kosi, to explain for you and for those who are listening on and don't know, there's a starchy kind of fruit grows on trees called the breadfruit, and that's, I think, indigenous to Barbados. But what yellow meat did was they introduced something totally new with the breadfruit. So usually in Barbados, we would roast the breadfruit over coals or over wood or whatever. But they took the roasted breadfruit, they cored it out, and they added fillings of different local fare. So things like salt fish and bull jowl and things that we're accustomed to. So it was both new, it was local, it was done by local people, and it was something that I think got people excited about it. Now, I've never interviewed Yellow Meat, but I feel almost like they were one of the people who started kind of a movement. I'm not saying that wasn't there before. We've always had local artisans and craftspeople and so on. And we also, similar to South Africa, had a Buy Bajan campaign. But Yellow Meat then paved the way, I think, for other street food vendors, if you want to call them that, who started to think more about the full experience. And one of those that I interviewed was Cobb's Street Corn. And I'll agree with Nkosi here that social media had a huge part to play because obviously with bigger brands you have the budget to do your advertising and to roll out campaigns and all of that, but now with social media obviously all that power is in the hands of the smaller micro enterprise, SME, whoever, the person who decides they're going to build out a brand based on the product and the business that they have. And so Cobb's Street Corn, I think, did that exceptionally well. And there was a lot of adoption, at least on social media. So there was a buzz both for yellow meat, there was a buzz for Cobb Street Corn. And then visiting the locations, you found that there was a buzz there as well. So I think for me, at least when I started to recognize that these trends were happening, it was around maybe 2016, 17, 18. And I do think social media had a lot to do with it, but I also think that um, a younger generation were trying to decide how can we do this different from our parents, because corn was something that was roasted on the side of the road. You could get that from a street side vendor. That's a traditional thing, it's always been done. But what Cobb Street Corn did, for instance, was took that and elevated it. So they incorporated all the things of a brand. And I remember speaking to the co-owner, Raquel Kennedy, and she said, in talking to her partner, she said, I think your idea is a good one because the timing is right. We have people our age and younger who appreciate the whole concept of a brand and the concept of a full experience around a product, but a full experience around street food. And so they felt that the timing was right. And I also think it had to do with timing and the fact that social media was there, and that you had a generation of people who were very willing to support each other. So while we're small, we're tiny, we're nowhere near the size of South Africa, and most of these brand builders don't have the kind of capital probably that those in South Africa would have. I do think there has been some adoption. I do think, though, what happens is can they sustain it? Because another one that I'm thinking of, Gems Chocolates, I think she's called. I interviewed her, Gems Gourmet Chocolates. She was also interesting because a local chocolatier had no idea how to make chocolate, reached out to people internationally via Facebook and figured it out, and then incorporated local ingredients into the chocolate truffles, and then ended up making chocolate bars, and then caught the attention of a local rum and spirits manufacturer who asked her to incorporate their flavors into her chocolates. So I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there after speaking to some of these people, and I think we're getting there, especially with skincare, health, and beauty. So we could talk about that as we go along.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dianne. And I like that you brought up the Buy Bajan campaign because Joseann would have done some research on the Buy Bajan campaign. Joseann, would you mind sharing some of the outcomes?
Okay. I actually did that research as part of my PhD thesis. And at that time, even though in the media it seemed to have been working, it wasn't really working on the ground. It would have traction, for example, maybe around independence, maybe around crop over, but it was not something that was sustained throughout the year. But there's one thing that I found at that time in doing the research. It was that older persons at that time were more willing to purchase a local product, even if they believed it was a bit more expensive or maybe the quality was not as good.
Mm-hmm.
Young people were not concerned at that time. But what Dianne is saying now is that we're seeing a trend where young people are willing to support local brands just as long as they can tap into the story. And I also think just as long as it's properly presented. Um, Years ago, you may have somebody selling food and you would say, that is Sue's canteen. Now
Mm-hmm.
we are drawing on all the symbolism of our culture, yellow meat, and
Mm-hmm.
the even I see the sign there when I'm passing by Chauffeur, it jumps out at me, the brown, the yellow, the wording, the whole energy that is around it, it's properly presented, but it has that local cultural flair. And I think that a lot of our young entrepreneurs have learned about marketing. They've either gone to BCC, not blowing our trumpet, they've come to KFL. When we read the Sunday Sun and we see a lot of the persons who are pushing successful local brands, they have training and they said, I don't want to work for anybody. I want to push this entrepreneurial venture. So I think that training, being exposed to how brands present themselves has helped our local indigenous entrepreneurs. And I think that the future like that, Dianne, I think it's bright. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Joseann, how long ago did you do your research?
That's a bad question, Ryan.
I'm not trying
Maybe
to
about
age you, but
2007 or 8. Maybe about then I collected the data, maybe around 2007.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because it kind of gives a perspective on, the timeline of the shift. And
Mhm.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything that may have happened in Barbados during that time that I can say or that you guys can think about that would have kind of promoted that shift.
I can tell you,
Oh,
we had a time of economic recession.
okay.
And that period, as well as time as the period before,
Mhm.
that's when a lot of indigenous businesses sprung up. Necessity is the mother of invention. And
Mhm.
when I don't have a job, I have all day to sit down and investigate how, when I bring this brand to market, I can bring it good.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
one, for one. And there's so many more resources that are free over the internet that people can look at. I
Mhm.
may be sitting in my parents' house, but I have cable TV to watch and I can understand how people create and promote brand stories and put brand messages out there. So I'm thinking that just having information,
Mhm.
would have made, and having desperation,
Oh,
you put those two things together, we would have seen progress out of that.
okay.
And I would actually watch. I was watching from
Mhm.
2008, and I would watch, like, when I'm seeing like little new vans on the road with signage at the side saying this business and the other. And I was also noting how well the signage looked and how professional. So the entrepreneurs who came out of the 2008 recession came out good,
Mhm.
in term, yeah.
Mhm. Now, Kosi, I know that you said that there was government involvement as it relates to trying to get persons more interested in, well, more celebratory of themselves as a people. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you think that that influenced um, interest in buying national?
Yeah, as Dan has explained, most of the global brands, they have budget. So it is quite easy for them to market themselves, to get their name out there. For small South African brands, they do not have that. So that puts them at a disadvantage. So when the government intervene with their resources to let us know that there are these South African brands that are existing among us, and we can get our needs or our wants serviced by these brands, that plays a huge role. Because first of all, they are creating awareness for this brand, that type of awareness that they would have never afforded to buy media space, to hire an advertising agency to create that for them. And I've also highlighted that social media also played a role in terms of increasing their brand awareness out there. And I think for any company that wants to make it domestic and globally, any government that wants its brand to be acknowledged within the country, they have to use their resources for that to happen. And second, although right now I'm mostly focusing on small South African brands, we have big South African brands that are in over 30 countries globally. A simple example is Nando's. Some of you might know
Oh,
Nando's.
Nando's. Okay.
Oh,
Yes,
really?
That's true.
yes, that's a South African brand,
Yeah.
and it's in over 30 countries across the world. We also have Rooibos tea. Maybe some of you might be familiar about Rooibos tea. It's in over 30 countries around the world. We have SAB Miller, which is the biggest beer producer in the world.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, in order for you to reach that status, you need to make it first in the domestic market. So, if domestic consumers are not receptive of your brand, it becomes a little bit difficult for you to make it outside your country. In my country, when it comes to the retail space, most of the companies in the retail space are South African companies. For instance, in the grocery space, I think we only have Messmart, which is coming from America, and others are all South African brands and South African owned companies. And because we are interested in buying our own products, they have now expanded to other countries. For instance, we have a company called MTN. MTN is in over 20 countries across Africa. We have ShopRite. It operates in over 25 countries across Africa because it was successful in its own country first, which makes it much easier now to go to other countries. And I think in order for you to buy your own, it starts with your mentality. It starts with knowing who you are. It starts with being proud of yourself. Because this thing of thinking that if a product comes from, let's say, Europe, it's superior. If it comes from Africa, it is inferior. It is a matter of mentality. Some might call it a slave mentality because a slave mentality, you have always been told that you are not good enough. So the more we invest in educating people that we matter, whatever we do will be perceived as something that matter. Whatever products we produce will also matter. That's it.
All right. I find. Oh, it looks like you were about to say something, Dianne.
Okay, I don't want you to forget what you were going to say, but just two things that I wanted to touch on. I wanted to go back to before pre 2008, 2007, 2008, and just reference an interesting thing that happened in Barbados in that the American brand McDonald's came to Barbados. We already had our Chefette fast food brand, which is over, what's that, over 30, 40 years now?
Yeah.
A long time.
And at least 15 locations in Barbados alone and vertically integrated. But McDonald's didn't make it against Chefette. And I'm going to say make it against Chefette because Chefette probably would have been the only, we may have had KFC at that time
Okay, I
too,
see.
other fast
Yeah, we
food and
did.
local fast food chain. And
Mhm.
McDonald's just didn't make it. I mean, people will say that there are different reasons why they didn't make it in that they just really preferred chicken
Mhm.
over beef burgers and that kind of thing. But the fact is that the Chefette brand won out domestically and McDonald's quickly left. And
Mhm.
I think that kind of laid the foundation for other international fast food brands who really didn't touch Barbados for a long time until Burger King
Long
decided
time.
to do that
Mhm.
in, what was it, 2014, 15, many years after that. And they came in pretty aggressively with a different strategy because I think they understood the market and they understood that Chefette was definitely ingrained in the psyche because if you on a Friday evening don't feel like cooking, but you have $15 in your pocket, where can you go to get a meal where you can get a protein, a little veg, and a meat, uh, a starch?
Starch. Mhm.
How many of these are you going to pass on your way home? How many people do you know who work there? I mean, the brand is in your face all the time in terms of the color palette and people walking by you in the uniforms and so on, and the number of people that they employ across Barbados. So Chefette is really one of those, I think, early studies of I guess one being first to market in a domestic market, and then being ingrained in such a way that the local market had so fully adopted them that it was difficult for an international player to get in. So that was one thing that I wanted to say. And then the other thing that I wanted to say, to Nkosi's point on leadership and leadership leading the way with this adoption and national identity, is that our Prime Minister here in Barbados, Honorable Mia Motley, coined a term in a conference that I attended in 2020. She called it cultural confidence. And if we think about between 2000, I think 2005, 6 or so, that was a period. Now, we already had artists, and these are entertainers who had made it overseas to some extent. But that was the point in time when one local girl who went overseas was signed to Jay-Z's company. So I'm talking about Rihanna. And I think for all of the young people who they had probably seen some success of entertainers and Barbadian entertainers, but seeing the extent of the success of Rihanna, I think also fed into that cultural confidence. So if this little Bajan girl can do it, it might seem like it's superficial, but I think it kind of sinks into the psyche in a way. So there's that. I don't even want to talk about cricket because I don't know what was happening with cricket at that time, but I can tell you that in the same way that in the 60s, for many of our forefathers, the cricket heroes of that time did that for us, that we walked around proud, we're West Indian people, and we have a winning team. This also helps to build the cultural confidence. So it takes one person who is taken from the local situation or a few people and transplanted to an international situation, and they are also a brand making it internationally. And I think that then also inspires people to say, okay, look, it's possible, and I don't need to think of myself just at the local level. I'm creating a brand, full stop, that I can take from here and move to wherever else in the world, and I feel it would be competitive. So just to I think reinforce Nkosi's point on that national identity, cultural confidence.
I like to say something that people may find controversial.
Okay.
Even if we look now at the fact that some of the top brands are being produced in China, when 20 years ago people thought Chinese was a place for cheap manufacturing, and now China is being seen as a superpower. I've come to realize that manufacturing capability equals high brand perception,
Mm.
in the sense that there's a mentality that anybody can do food or anybody can sing, but a country is a top country when it has manufacturing capability.
Mhm.
And I think that is what has held Caribbean countries back. We have tried so hard with, we have those manufacturing zones, we have export promotion. But for me, there's something called economies of scale. And because our markets are so small, even if we're getting everybody in Barbados to buy it, we may not get down our prices to the point that we become viable as exporters, even with currency issues, because remember our dollar is tied to the US dollar. It's a strong dollar. When I compare that, for example, to South Africa, where the population is so large, yeah, you are able to produce appliances for population and do very well there, and even perfect that appliance before, and even get your cost down before you have to branch out. So for me, a big issue here is simply scale.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, well, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Um, I want to double back a little bit though to one of the things that both Kosi and Dianne talked about as it relates to national identity, because Kosi talked about a lot of our brands being accepted, a lot of your brands being accepted domestically first, and then being accepted overseas. And um, the two examples, or was it just one that Dianne gave with Rihanna being accepted overseas? So she was accepted overseas. Our prime minister, she's very well regarded overseas for sure. And that also boosts our confidence. So I think that maybe for us, when we see the recognition abroad, then we start to attach a significance to it. And I'm not saying that that's always the case, but that's just one of the connections that I drew. I've also heard, actually, I read an article yesterday about a young artist, and not to put him on the spot, who talked about how well his work, his music was doing overseas, and in Barbados it was not doing very well. And he was talking about things like nepotism, how it affected sales. And also, I think in the Barbados market, I hear that a lot. I hear, this conversation, and I've grown up hearing it about Bajans not supporting each other, Black people not supporting each other. And so there is that narrative, I think, that feeds into that non-support of local brands, as you will, or has fed into it in the past. I am one that I don't agree with that narrative. I believe that we do support each other, um, and I think that, I mean, the amount of small shops and mini marts and stuff that you have in Barbados shows that people do buy from each other. I mean, it may not be the brand, but support local businesses. But I think that when we start to overcome that perception, and we realize that we are very similar, that we do all want the same thing, and that also um, everybody's not trying to tear you down. I think that you will have more motivation to go out there and to push your brand, because you'll be more optimistic or enthusiastic about putting it out there and the possibility of getting support in return.
I'd like to say something about that. I think a lot of because our market is so small, we do sometimes don't appreciate the concept of segmentation. You
Mm-hmm.
may realize as a local entrepreneur that everybody in Barbados is not buying from you, but a particular segment of consumers is.
Exactly.
Like, for example, when I think about Bowl by Tea, I think that people who like things that smell natural, you could actually figure out what's in the container. It's not a lot of bells and whistles. It's almost like medicine for your skin. That you may actually, both body may actually be doing very well in that segment. And it says that if that segment exists in Barbados, it exists in somewhere else. And the thing is to find that segment across the world and follow that segment and meet the needs of that segment. But because being in a huge, and everybody in Barbados and Bennett, we don't gain support. So I think it is understanding who your customer is and knowing that that customer exists across borders and seeking to find who that person is.
And what's really interesting about that is I actually have a friend I had a conversation with this about this with the other day. She was talking about this book that she contributed to, and she was saying that she realizes that Bajans don't support each other because people haven't been buying the book. And my question was, okay, well, first of all, let me just say I don't particularly like reading, right? I will read on the internet, but I'm not picking up a novel, right? I'm not interested. And so you may think that I don't want to support you, but it may not be that I don't want to support you. I'm just not your market. And I think that that's what people need to realize. So, but she works alongside this other entrepreneur. So he is the writer, but he also has other businesses, and his other businesses are doing well. So why say that Bajans aren't supporting others because this one particular initiative is not? So we have to, I completely agree with you that we have to take into consideration not only brand, but what is the market really looking for? And deciding, okay, do I have a market here locally, or do I need to push it overseas? And I think, and that's definitely something that they've been doing. They've definitely been pushing the book overseas.
I think what usually happens, especially with small businesses, they have this mentality that they should be supported by local people, of which I think is wrong, because people do not buy from a person, they are buying solutions to their problems. So if your product solves their problems, I don't see a reason why would they not want their problems to go away. It is important for people to understand their market, as she has said, understand what are the problems in that particular market and present solutions to those problems. So every consumer has a problem and they want those problems to go away. It does not matter where the solution is coming from. So that's what entrepreneurs need to have in their mind, that they are not just producing products, that they are producing solutions to the problems. So that's just what I wanted to add.
And I think that that's another thing. I mean, that part of the conversation can go really broad and go on. So that's definitely a conversation for another time. But that's why I always emphasize to business owners or even persons that I teach that it has to start with research. Marketing is about creating, communicating, and delivering value.
That's right.
Right. So, before we get to the branding stage, we have to look at delivering value. And then you add your brand on top of that, So you put your logo, the name, the service, the ambiance, whatever. But as you guys rightly said, it comes down to the solution or the value that the product brings. So thank you so much, guys, for bringing that up, because I think that that's really important. Anybody else has any comments before we move on?
I'm good.
Okay.
Me too.
All right. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on, I know that Kosi talked about Brand South Africa, and Brand South Africa is the government's marketing agency, and it is involved in promoting South Africa for tourism and investment. And one of the things that I noticed when I went on the website was that it was not just about business. They did talk about inspiring confidence, and I guess that same cultural confidence, so to speak. So it wasn't just about advertising the country, it was about instilling in persons a sense of confidence and pride in being a South African. And I thought it was very, very interesting because I cannot think of one organization locally that we have that does such a thing. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. I know we have BTMI, and so that's Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. We have Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., and those are very tourism focused. Recently, and tourism is our main business. Recently, we've had bookbarbados.com, which I am actually really excited about because it's a public-private sector partnership, and it allows Barbadians to actually be able to participate in branding Barbados. And so it is our first booking engine, our first local booking engine. So previously we would have had to depend on Expedia or other booking engines to book Barbados, but now it's something that's being done locally, and there's affiliate marketing involved, and also the opportunity for local businesses to get involved. So I really like the idea that we get to be a part of branding our country. And then there's Export Barbados, which BIDC, the Barbados. Oh gosh,
Export Barbados used to be Barbados
I'm trying
Investment.
to remember the
Barbados Investment and
Industrial
Development
Development Corporation. Yes, which looks at trying to basically, help entrepreneurs to build out their products. They provide support for export, support in terms of training, that kind of thing. But I don't know that there's one organization. And as a marketer, I actually really appreciate that there is one brand for South Africa, because marketing communications is very important to me. And so the value of marketing communications, integrated marketing communications, is that everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet. There's a consistent brand, consistent messaging. And so I think that an idea like that would be really great for brands in Barbados. Dianne, Joseann, what do you think?
I agree. I think it's important to actually think about what the Barbadian brand could possibly represent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are a premium tourism destination. It doesn't matter what happens. Hoteliers in Barbados don't have to drop room rates.
Yeah.
You know, having lived in the UK for a little bit, and then you say to people, I'm from Barbados, the awe. But are we able to carry that same positioning onto other aspects of the economy? You know, so to me, it is a case of figuring out, if you want that one message, what is that one message going to be? And we have stakeholders who are very entrenched in holding on to tourism as our chief money earner. I mean, it has worked for us. You know, I remember having a colleague from Ethiopia visit KFIL, and he looked at me, he says, Barbados works. It works. You know, it is so small, but we have free tertiary education, tax to high heaven free school meals. We know people who school meals workers would give them extra to take home, and those people are doctors and lawyers today.
Mm-hmm. True.
So Barbados has worked. Barbados has worked by when other people were floating their dollar, we boldly said, no, we're going to tie it to the US dollar. So how is that going to work now as we try to transition into other aspects of the economy that we really need to?
Mm-hmm.
And how will we make that shift?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible to maybe try to come in with a manufacturing brand which pushes maybe value with a little of the exotic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that we can say luxury or premium unless we are attaching it to something, for example, like Sea Island cotton, which hurt me because I saw
Yeah.
that we had an opportunity there. I also thought we had an opportunity with black belly lamb.
Can you talk to,
I
so
think
can you
we had
share
an
a little bit
opportunity
more
with
about
sugar
that?
and rum.
Can you share a little bit more about that for our international audience as well as Nkosi?
Okay. We were told, and we believe it, that cotton grown in Barbados was premium cotton, top quality, and it was our hope that half of the island would have been for me growing cotton and producing garments. We have top designers here. I don't think they have anything on us. And maybe we could have come in as a premium brand in that respect. The thing is about identifying those 3-4 things that you were good at and consolidating around them. Maybe we've been too touching here and touching there and not really making any impact. But if I had to sell Barbados, I would sell sugar, rum, Sea Island cotton, and black belly sheep. And focus on that, because that is where you had some type of comparative advantage, and just keep saying it. A lot of branding is just saying what it is. This is what it is. And hopefully you have reasonable quality that will back it up, because there are a lot of consumers out there who can't really assess quality. A
It's
lot
true.
of what is it they believe is what they're told.
Mm-hmm.
So I sometimes wonder if we miss the boat in some of these ventures and aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my perspective is this. Going back to your question of if there is one organization to do this, Roanne, is the question of that, I think, is a little bit ticklish, as we would say in Barbados, because I think there have been organizations that have attempted to do that. Like Joseann pointed out, most of it is around tourism. But the issue is that, in our democracy, you change governments every 3, 4, 5, whatever years. And then you had a manifesto that said we're going to do X, Y, Z. And so along comes change. And sometimes there were things that were working that are shifted, even if they're shifted just a little bit, and they kind of get off course. So I do think that for us, if there's a government that's in term over a longer period, maybe that might make more of a difference. But what's way more important is that the population itself, the business community themselves are somehow able to pull together. And I think that whole idea of the cultural confidence coming back in, and us driving kind of from the bottom up, so that whoever is there is a one voice from the business, the cultural community, is this is where we're heading, this is where we want to go, this is what we believe we can do. Government support is obviously great, wonderful big campaigns and thrust from governments, that's beautiful, but it's whether or not it can be sustained. And if in a 3 to 5 year period, if you can put enough into it in that short period of time to help give it enough capacity to take off. So I just think that that's the kind of maybe tightrope that we're walking. And so that's why I feel that at least with a lot of younger, older people of all ages taking advantage of what's there for social media and supporting each other where they can. And it obviously being this tidal wave of whatever you do, there are going to be Barbadian brands. We're
Yes.
somehow going to make it better. There's no overlooking it. Right. So I think the tidal wave does have to come from us. So that's my perspective on it. I don't know if it is one organization, but I do think that if we have successive leaders, icons, whether they're community leaders, national leaders, leaders on whatever kind of level, who are constantly feeding, showing, modeling, telling that message of what we have is great, what
Yes.
we do is great, who we are is great. That's going to create something that's actually long term and sustainable. So it might not be one organization, it may be more, but it needs to be sustained. I think that's the key thing.
True. I agree. And the truth is, we do have to work with what we have. We may want to push for certain things to happen, but in the meantime, we do have to, do what we have to do. So Kosi has dropped off, but just picking up from what you said last, and kind of wrapping up, you talked about, again, developing that cultural confidence and the messaging, coming from the top and going down. And
from the bottom and going up.
and from the bottom and going up. And interestingly, when you talked about the bottom and going down, I wasn't just thinking about government level. I was thinking even in terms of like parents, for example, and parents instilling that confidence, that cultural confidence in their children. And I think that if we have it, or the younger people have it, it's definitely something that they have the ability to instill in the next generation. But I wanted to know, from an educational perspective, if that's something that we push or encourage here. I know that, having spoken to Kosi, he talked to me about his university and how they use a lot of local brands for projects, for their marketing projects. So their marketing students actually get the opportunity to design marketing communications campaigns for local brands, and are often hired by local brands. Is there anywhere in our education system, Joseann, even at the university level, the tertiary level, where that is encouraged?
That happens, Rowan. I teach a course called marketing research. If an entrepreneur comes to me, they want some research done, I'll put my students to do it.
Perfect.
Often pro bono. What I don't do pro bono though is when you have these big firms that have deep pockets and they just want you to provide them with a cheap solution to doing research. No, I'm not going to let somebody walk off the street and take advantage of my students' time and intellect. Yeah, but entrepreneurs, yes. I remember one project we did for a young lady who wanted to look into aquaponics. Right now, the university has to generate its own income. Last semester, too, I had my graduate students work on 3 pretty decent income generating projects for research. And I think one of the projects has just gotten some funding from the Massey Foundation. So, yeah, we are willing. We are willing. A lot of the persons who teach at the University of the West Indies came through the system and got a lot of help, and they would help entrepreneurs if they came and they made an approach. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
as long as you can fit in this particular semester when I'm teaching this particular course, and I don't think that there are people in my department in that business school who would help people. Because you really can't go ask a guy from history history to do it for you
Yeah,
because
to
it's
do a
not
market
his
communications plan.
expertise. But so
Yeah.
we have big classes, etc. But there are ways to do things.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to do things. And
Yeah, I was gonna. Sorry, Joseann.
I
Go
just
ahead.
want to say one thing. A lot of the very successful entrepreneurs in Barbados have made money out of, for example, if we take Kevin Simpson, he negotiated with Suzuki, and I'm told that he makes money off of Suzuki's coming straight from Florida down the whole Caribbean chain. These guys were smart, they were able to negotiate, and they've done well. Retail makes money quickly. People watch cable TV, they're educated about the brands. I bring the brand in, it sells. It's time for, this is a challenge, for the persons who have made money selling imported brands to local people to sit down and identify 10 local brands that they can now help and take the risk, because they've made money easy importing and selling foreign brands to local people. And it is time for payback.
Agreed. Agreed.
Let me
Go
add
ahead.
two things there. I wanted to say that even when back in the day, right? when I did my certificate in marketing, public relations, and advertising, we worked with local, for PR, we worked with a local nonprofit on their PR strategy and the campaign. And I think we worked with a local business. So I think, like Joseann said, in the education sector, we're definitely, that's always being done. But on Joseann's point, I know that just a few companies are kind of sticking their toes in the water. The same Gems gourmet chocolates that I mentioned, they were a recent winner in the first leg of the Goddard Enterprises Limited, which is one of the major conglomerates here. Their 100th anniversary, you probably know about it, Joseann, their 100th anniversary entrepreneur awards. The amounts are really not that big. So after winning the first leg, you get US $5,000. You go for a year more, and then there's an assessment. And then if you're shortlisted in the next three, you get, I'm just looking at my notes here, US $12,500. And then if you go on to be the winner, then you get US $25,000. So by no stretch of the imagination, depending on what kind of business it
Money.
is it a lot of money, but it's certainly more money than they could have depended on for most of them, I think, especially for Gems chocolates. Just to have a grant where, it's not a loan that you have to repay or anything like that. So I think some of the companies are dipping their toes in. A second thing that I can reference, maybe you mentioned Massey, and I think Nudge, there's Nudge Caribbean.
Agreed. I was
I
just
know
about to talk
one brand that's been involved in that, but I think there's several across the Caribbean, and they've been giving support in terms of pop-ups to display the brands. And also, I'm going to say technical support in terms of some marketing, so maybe shooting some videos and things like that. But I think it's across the Caribbean, and that is Massey. I
Yes,
think
it's Massey.
Nudge is a Massey initiative, and one brand that I'm familiar with, Okoye by Kim, very familiar because the founder is a friend of mine, and she does OB belts, so wrap belts, is a part of that. And I think in just a year of operation, at least what she has had is the local exposure. So I think companies are kind of dipping their toes in. And Joseann, I would agree with you though that, maybe the big brands like Chefette who understood how it's done, maybe they can give a little bit more in this area, although they give in other areas. I'm
Yes,
not
they
going to
do.
say they don't give. but clearly in the areas where we need to develop the whole packaging around a brand and understanding the market and understanding what other markets there are that you can service, I think that is critical. And then the third thing that I wanted to say, sorry, Roanne,
No, that's okay.
I should become okay, is on the point of scale, Joseann, that you made about economies of scale and scale in itself. I think artisan industries where you're talking about handcrafted, handmade, smaller operations and so on, obviously more of a premium price, is an area worldwide that has exploded. And the trend is upwards. And I think here locally, where we're thinking about handmade skincare products and the soaps like the Gold by D's and the Dawn by Nature's and those people, there are definitely the market segments for that, along with the whole, and there's an avalanche of that whole thinking of sustainable products and sustainable living and all these things and natural and simple and all of that. So to me, those brands have a good opportunity both domestically and outside of Barbados. And I know for sure that Dawn by Nature had been approached by someone external, I think, who wanted large quantities. So to your point about manufacturing, having the manufacturing capability or being able to license a formula and have it produced somewhere else, those are things that we then have to put in place. Done.
Just one more thing.
Okay.
I would love, there's one more challenge. I would love about 5 of these brands to be adopted as Rihanna's brands. I would love that. It is if these entrepreneurs are up for the rigor, because Rihanna not gonna put Sinead behind nothing that can be scaled up. But Rihanna's 5 home brands, what she's used when she get home,
Yeah.
we only need 5.
It's true.
That's a whole other discussion, but just by wearing people's things,
Exactly. It explodes.
Because the thing is, she's worn this girl's crochet item, and that may take a little time, and there may be only a few people in Barbados who could crochet like this girl. But if it is something Rihanna paint when she face, we go formula, we roll it. You know, so that is a bit different. To be able to scale that up is easier. You know? Yeah.
All right. Well, is that here? Okay. My apologies for the feedback. I want to give you all the opportunity to make one closing comment.
Just one.
Kosi.
Let's let Nkosi go first.
We've been talking, so you go ahead, Kosi. You could take our time.
More than one. Kosi seems to be stuck.
Yeah, you frozen.
All right, so I'll let Dianne go next, and then Joseann, and then we'll come back to Kosi and let him close us off.
Okay, well, I guess my closing comment is the whole thing, what we've been discussing, let's talk indigenous brands, is preference. So that is a consumer behavior issue, and it's really up to consumers what they choose. So it's finding out why they choose what they choose. If you are the brand builder, you have to figure out why they choose what they choose. You have to understand the environment around you, what's happening now, what is influencing people to buy, what's influencing people's decisions. And I think if brand builders can really tap into that, as Joseann would say, the research is really important. And I think you, Roanne, said that as well. But just having a good sense of why people are buying and why they prefer things now in this environment, and also what's coming. So having that good overview of the political environment, the legal environment, you know the deal, the environment itself, issues that are at hand, and the concerns that people have, and the problems that they really need solutions to now, but also that they're thinking about into the future. I think great brands can be built on having a good sound knowledge of that. So if you want to influence people's preferences, I think that's a good start. And I think we have many brands here that have made a good start.
Okay. Joseann?
I would agree. I think that there are many Barbadian brands now with promise. You know, there may be room for even consolidations because consolidations will increase your resource base. You know, but as I said, want to throw that challenge out there to successful retail brands. We know retail isn't sometimes as risky, but Barbados cannot survive depending on tourism. This pandemic has shown us just how vulnerable we are. Yeah, and we cannot survive on just borrowing. The countries that will make it in the world are the countries that create wealth. You know, as we move into the dispensations, and it is time. It is high time. I think looking around, we know it is time. You know, to not to pull away from tourism, but to carve a focus. You know, that is different to what we have. It is very important, and it is possible. You know, it is possible. Many hands make light work, but we have to find those things that we're going to throw all our weight behind instead of piecemeal. We have to and make that commitment. You know, and I really appreciate how South Africa, the South African government has educated the people. Look, this we going with this. You know, and really and truthfully, I believe, even looking at the last election result, that Miss Motley has the ear of the people, you know, and it is time to find that message and identify not short term, we can fix this road and thing, but where is Barbados going and how are we going to get there? Because I would love to see the quality of life that Barbadians have sustained. One of my best friends in the world is a Swazi, you know, and I remember her coming to Barbados and commenting on even how everybody has such nice cars but you know, is can we continue to sustain this life? You know, being so dependent on an industry that is now so susceptible to climate change, viruses. And look, people in Maui and Bali and those places ain't lying down playing dead, you know. Those people are giving top vacations and not for top dollar,
Much cheaper.
you know. So how much longer will people believe that this is the place to spend the money you have saved for vacation for the last 5 years? I pray forever. Bye.
All right, and I want to give Nkosi his opportunity to give his closing remarks. I'm giving you more than one.
Okay, thank you so much. I deeply apologize for my connectivity. I know I just sold South Africa so much and internet is disappointing me, so it's giving me a negative perception. So that's going back to our topic. I think every country should be pushing for its own products. And it makes life easier when you are able to buy your own products and buy other people's products, not being just a receiver. I'm so happy with what is happening in the South African wine industry. About 76% of South Africans, they drink alcohol. 43% of South Africans drink wine. And those who drink wine, about 60% of them, they are buying South African wine because they understand the story behind the South African wine and they are able to visit the wineries in South Africa. So I think although we are consuming about 40% of international wine, we are still able to consume our own products. And to me, that is an ideal world. I would like that to happen in other product areas in South Africa. So although we are doing much well or good in other spaces, such as in the wine industry, in the clothing industry, in appliances, we still rely on international products. We buy the Samsungs, the iPhones, all of those things. So my dream is to drive a car produced in Africa. I don't care which country in Africa. It's to use a cell phone produced in Africa. I don't care which country in Africa. And as a continent, we are still lacking when it comes to such things. I would like to see innovation, not just common products, buying a jean produced in South Africa or buying a jacket produced in South Africa, like real products, such as cars, such as electronics. So I wish that could happen for Africa. Thank you.
And in closing, I would say that for us in Barbados, again, we talk about economies of scale and the really small size of our country, which limits manufacturing capabilities, for example. So there will always be a dependency on the outside for certain products and services. But one thing that COVID has taught us is that, we need to have our own thing as well, because when there's supply chain delays, for example, it can be problematic, even when we think about the cost of importation. So it is not only good for us in terms of national pride and support, but it's also very good for the economy. And I would like to say that we're not saying, never buy international brands, but we are saying that we want to send a message that what we produce can also and is also equally as good. So thank you so much for being present for my first ever podcast. This is a really big deal.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. Would you like to share with the audience where they can contact you if they're interested?
Okay, so for me, I am on LinkedIn at Dianne N Squires.com is my handle on LinkedIn and also on Instagram. But I also have a website, DianneNSquires.com. And as you can see it right there on the screen, so you know the spelling, DianneNSquires.com, at Dianne N Squires on LinkedIn and Instagram.
I'm best with emails. So just send it to Joseann Knight at yahoo.com. All lowercase, no spaces. Joseann Knight at yahoo.com. I will check that 3 or 4 times a day.
Nkosi?
See there?
Nkosi, how would you prefer to be contacted? Nkosi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I'm
Okay.
so sorry. My connectivity is just terrible. After this, I think I need to leave.
That's okay.
So what were you saying?
How can we reach you?
Did you
How
ask
can the
a
audience
question?
reach you? If the audience wants to reach you, how can they reach you?
Okay, I think I'm also reachable via an email, not social media or other platforms. At my name, Nkosivile.Madinga @uct.ac.za.
Okay. All right, and I can provide their contact information when I publish a broadcast. And for me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn at Joseann Smith. That's my full name, Joseann Smith. And you can also reach me via my email for my business, which is sschoolofbusiness@gmail.com. So thank you so much for joining us. This is Noble Company, and where we have noble company having great conversations. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.